Hello, math people. This is a quick little review lesson on multiplying fractions. Let's get to it. When you are multiplying fractions, the big thing that I think can sometimes get lost, and if it does, it's going to cause a lot of extra problems. You do not need common denominators. So when you add or subtract fractions, you do need to take the time to make sure that all of the fractions that you're adding and or subtracting have common denominators. When you multiply fractions, though, common denominators are not necessary. If you find common denominators, you'll ultimately still get to the correct final answer. However, you're going to be adding a lot of extra work and potentially making the problem way more difficult than it needs to be. So the first thing to remember is when multiplying fractions, do not find common denominators because you don't need them and you're making the problem unnecessarily more challenging. With that being said, when you multiply fractions, the steps are very easy. Step 1, multiply your numbers on top, aka the numerators, followed by multiplying the numbers on the bottom, called the denominators, and then you're done. The only extra thing would be to simplify your final answer. So we could look at a really small, easy example, 3/7 times 1/2. Well, as it says, multiply the numerators, 3 times 1 is 3, multiply the denominators, 7 times 2 is 14, and if possible, simplify. In this case, you can't simplify, so we have our final answer, and we're done, 3/14. Now, we should also talk about a potential trick that can help you, and I call it pre-simplifying. So in a normal world, you could just multiply top times top, bottom times bottom, and then simplify your final answer until you can't get it simplified any further. For example, here, both of these numbers can be divided by 4, or by 6, or by 12. But eventually, if you simplify it further, you'll get down to 2/3, 2/3. There is a way, though, to simplify before you actually do any multiplication. And the way this works is by understanding how multiplication happens. When you multiply two fractions, we'll use this same problem. What we've said is that it's the same as 8 times 3 over 9 times 4. You multiply the numerators and you multiply the denominators. Writing it in this format, we can see that I have a numerator and a denominator now that share a common factor. And I'm going to simplify them before I even multiply. 8 and 4 can both be divided by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. I also see that 9 and 3, these both share a common factor. Those can both be divided by 3. 3 divided by itself is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And what do you know? 2 times 1 is 2 on top. 3 times 1 is 3 on the bottom. I'm still getting to 2/3, that same answer that we got here. But instead of having to simplify at the end of the problem, I've simplified before I even started. Where this is valuable, I think, is when you have a problem that involves bigger numbers or more than two numbers being multiplied. And we're going to look at one of those examples right now, just so that I can show you the value of pre-simplifying. Okay, so in this other example, 5/24 times 8/15, if I were to just straight up multiply this, 5 times 8, 40 on top, and then, oh no, 24/15 times 15, that's going to be a large number. And then I'm going to have to deal with simplifying that. I don't want to do that. Well, that's where pre-simplifying is somewhat useful. So this problem really means 5 times 8 over 24 times 15. And in writing it this way, I can see, one of my numerators and denominators have a common factor. I can divide both of those by 5. 5 divided by itself is 1, and 15 divided by 5 is 3. And then I should also be able to see that 8 and 24, one of the numerators and denominators, share a common factor. Both of those can be divided by 8. And in doing that, look what we've done. We've simplified this problem all the way down to 1 times 1 on top and 3 times 3 on the bottom. And I get this nice, small, simplified fraction done without having to deal with any large numbers. It's kind of nice. One more example, just to really drive the point home. Here I'm multiplying 3 fractions, 1/4 times 5/8 times 16 over 25. And pre-simplifying here is again going to save you from getting large numbers that you then at the end would have to simplify. Pre-simplifying works with however many numbers you're multiplying. 2 numbers, 3 numbers, 4 numbers. When there's more than 2 numbers, it's actually beneficial because now you have more options of things to simplify with. So for example, I noticed that 16, that's one of the numerators, and 4, one of the denominators, can both share a common factor. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 16 divided by 4 is 4. And then I noticed 5 and 25 can both be divided by 5. That reduces those numbers pretty significantly. And then look, there's even one other thing you can do. I now have a 4 here. 4 and 8, those both share a common factor. You can divide both of those by 4. And that's going to get our fraction way, way down. If I was to multiply this straight up, I get some pretty big numbers, especially in the denominator. Now on top I've got 1 times 1 times 1. And on the bottom I've got 1 times 2 times 5, 1/10. Look at that, already simplified and done. So there's value in pre-simplifying, I think. It's a skill I would practice, and you can really condense some of these multiplication problems that you come across by using this little trick. I hope that helps. If you have further questions, as always, reach out, and otherwise, see ya.